In episode 52, the story begins with a volcanic eruption that's coming from nearby Hook Mountain. Then one of the pterodactyls, long story short, has carried the gemstone to Hook Mountain until another pterodactyl comes in its direction to attack it. After the gemstone was dropped in front of the patch of ice, with a little bit of sunshine, it melts the ice. And there's the Ice King that's been frozen for a long time. We'll get back to that later. What happened next is unbelievable. The ice giant that was inside of the mountain has been brought to life. And the next thing that it did after it came to life is that it went to the snowman's castle on Hook Mountain. Now, the ice giant has never seen Snowman's castle quite like it until that very moment. So he decided to pursue it. So, meanwhile, at Snowman's castle, what the ice giant did next is that he created himself an ice bridge to get himself across there. So that's what he did. So back with the ice giant who was crossing the ice bridge which he made himself, snowmen who have heard what had happened, that there are earthquakes that's coming from below, and when he saw that there's an ice giant that's heading towards his castle, he knew he had to defend it whatever the cost. So he did. So, back with Snowman, he has his suspicions that after all these years, the Ice King has been set free, but the problem is, he had no idea of how. So, what he did next is that he called for his psychic Snowmeow to approach him. So, he did. So, meanwhile, Snowman's psychic Snowmeow saw from below an Ice King that's headed towards the castle. So, what the snowman did is that he asked his psychic to destroy the bridge with a catapult. So, he did. So back with Snowman, who's Snowman's psychic, he set it up the catapult for the snowman to load it up. So he did. So back with the Ice King, he continues to get closer and closer to the castle. Back with Snowman and his psychic Snowmeow, now that the catapult's all set and ready to go, it aimed at the ice bridge. Well, the middle of it to be exact. Well, it seemed to work. That's the good news. Back with the Ice King, now that he realizes that his ice bridge had been destroyed thanks to Snowman and Psychic, well, the middle of it anyway, he had to find himself another way into the castle. Back with Snowman and his psychic Snowmeo, they wanted to make sure that the Ice King will never get in no matter what. So that's what they did. Back with the Ice King, he just climbed himself up. And when he saw Snowman and his psychic Snowmeow coming, he had to prepare himself for attack. So that's what he did. And by the time he threw an icicle, it disarms the snowman. Well, back with the Ice King, now that he made it on the top of the ravine, he goes one on one with the snowman. And you kind of figured what is his plan. Well, he uses his ice power on him. Well, luckily for Snowmeow, he manages to maintain it, but not so for his sidekick, the snowman. Things are looking bad for the snowman after he was dismounted off of his sidekick, Snowmeow. He knew that he couldn't stand a chance against the Ice King, so before he was encased in ice, he told his sidekick Snowmeow to go get help right away. So Snowman says, "Go, Snowmeow, go get help. Get the Thundercats here right away. And hurry." And so after that, the snowman was encased in ice. So Snowmeow, who's Snowman's sidekick, left Hook Mountain. Oh, by the way, the reason why the Snowmeow didn't get encased in ice is because his fur protects him. So meanwhile, at Cat's Lair, in the control room, we have Lionel, the leader of the Thundercats. He just saw Snowmeow, who had just left Hook Mountain moments ago, and he had just arrived. Now Lionel couldn't help but think to himself, what is Snowmeow doing here? So he didn't hesitate to open the drawbridge so that Snowmeow could be let into Cat's lair. So that's what exactly that Lionel did. So back with Snowmeow, who's Snowman's sidekick, he went inside the control room of Cat's lair and he just told Lionel what had happened moments ago back at Hook Mountain, right before he left. He suspected, according to Lionel, that Snowman must be in trouble and needed help right away. After Lionel confirms it with Snowman's psychic Snow Meow, he knows that Snowman needed help. So what he did first is that he goes to the sword chamber to get his claw shield and his sword. After that, Lionel meets up with Snowman's psychic Snow Meow outside of Cat's lair. So now on top of Snow Meow, Lionel and Snow Meow both head off to Hook Mountain. So, meanwhile at Hook Mountain, well, good news, Lionel and Snow Meow, who's Snowman's psychic, had finally arrived. But now, according to Lionel, what he saw was unbelievable. And the bad news, he saw the ice giant that he's never seen before, and he's attacking the castle. If that's not bad enough, what Lionel saw was unbelievable. The snowman encased in ice. Lionel just couldn't believe what he'd just seen, so he told Snowman's sidekick Meow to charge forward, so he did. Back with the ice giant, he was still attacking the castle until he hears Lionel's voice saying, "Hold it right there! Stop what you're doing! Free the snowman! I command you," he said, but the Ice King chose to ignore him. Long story short, back with the Ice King, who got very upset with Lionel because he used his sword's power against his attack. So what the Ice King did next is that, thanks to Lionel using his sword power against his ice power, so Lionel manages to get away for a while, but then the Ice King uses the snow tornado to go after Lionel and Snowmeow, and they try to make their escape, or so they thought. Then, long story short, things are looking bad for Lionel. He not only gets trapped in a snow tornado, he then got disarmed, and just like what happened next is what the snowman did. Lionel too was encased in ice, just like what Snowman did. Well, Snowman knew that there was no time to lose. It was time for him to escape. So back with Snowmeow, who's Snowman's psychic, before heading off, he grabs Lionel's sword, and what he saw next was unbelievable. The same snow tornado was creating an avalanche from Hook Mountain. So Snowmeow knew that there was no time to lose, so he left Hook Mountain, just like he did once before. As the avalanche continues to ravage all over Hook Mountain, there was snow everywhere, from the Trollocs caves to the Moomin mines. And then finally, the avalanche stopped right in front of Cat's lair. Long story short, inside the Thunder Tank were Panthro, Chitara, and Tigra. Now, Panthro finds this very weird that there's snow everywhere, but Tigra says that that's impossible and there's no way. Also in the Thunder Tank was Snarf, and then it's Chitara's turn to plead her case to say, "If I'm not mistaken, my intuition tells me there's something wrong." Snarf, however, has his turn to plead his case that he'd rather be in the warm place with Lionel right about now because he said the Snarfs are not built for cold weather. But he has no idea that Lionel's at Hook Mountain. But then Panther saw something or someone up ahead. It's Snow Meow, Snowman's sidekick from Hook Mountain. Chitara has seen Snow Meow too, and so did Snarf. So back with Snow Meow, he was climbing on top of the tank, and he's face to face with Tiger, who's seen him, and Panther as well. And that's when Snarf realizes that Snow Meow has Lionel's sword. So after Snarf had pleaded his case to say, "I don't like the looks of this," then Panther was asking Snowmeow to hand over Lionel's sword, but he refused. But then Chitara has a hunch that maybe Snowmeow's trying to tell them something. In Chitara's case, she's not wrong. Then Tigra has his turn to not only agree with Chitara, he too has a hunch that Snowmeow wants them to follow him. So Panther says, "Okay, we'll follow you." So that's exactly what the Thundercats and the Thunder Tank did. They followed Snowmail right in front of Cat's lair. According to Panther, there's a bunch of snow everywhere. Anyway, Tigra made a suggestion that maybe Lionel's still in the lair. So Chitara says, "You guys go on ahead. I'll check out the lair. I'll catch up with you later," she suggested. So the Thundercats continued on to follow Snowmeow to Hook Mountain. So back with the Thundercats, Panthro, Snarf, and Tigra, they continued to follow Snowmeow. Anyway, they just couldn't believe there's a bunch of snow everywhere and there's only one place where it's coming from. According to Tiger's hunch, his suspicions is confirmed it's coming from Hook Mountain itself. With good news, they've arrived at Hook Mountain. Back with Chitara, who just left the lair moments ago, bad news for her. She just found out that the lair was empty, and that's because she and her friends had no idea that Lionel had already left from there. And that's when, by surprise, she finds Lionel encased in ice. But wait, that's not all. She also finds the snowman also encased in ice, too. When the Thunder Tank showed up, that's when Chitara told Tiger, Snarf, and Panther the bad news that not only she found Lionel encased in ice, but the snowman too. Stay with him, Panther said, and so Chitara agrees. Back with Panther, he just told Snowmeow, we gotta do something about this. But before they could do anything about it, remember the Ice King that was still at Snowman's castle? When he found out that the Thunder Tank had arrived, he threw pieces of the snow castle at them being Tiger, Snarf, and Panther at the Thunder Tank. Then, long story short, both the Thunder Tank and the Ice King are attacking each other back and forth. That was until the Ice King uses his ice power. And what happened next was unbelievable. Something just lifted up the Thunder Tank. And then Snark just found out what happened. According to him, he says there's an ice column that's underneath them thanks to the Ice King who projected it. But then, thanks to Panthro, he has an idea. He uses firepower from under the tank, of course, to melt the column. And so that's what he did. The Ice King just couldn't believe what he's seen. But then, long story short, Snarf panicked and then asked the question, the snowfog's not going to hurt the Thunder Tank, is it? Well, to answer Snarf's question, that's when both Panther and Tiger suspected that it's not fog at all. Something is freezing up the Thunder Tank. Until at last, thanks to the Ice King, the entire Thunder Tank along with Snarf, Panther, and Tiger was frozen in ice, just like what Lionel and the Snowman did. Well, except for Chitara and Snowmeow. Well, good news, they're fine. But now here comes a problem. How did they get everyone unfrozen? But then, aha, Chitara has a plan. She told Snowmeow to give her Lionel's sword, and so he agrees. Then she went over to Lionel to where he was frozen in ice. So what she did is that she chipped away the ice to free his hand, then puts the sword in his hand. And what it did next was unbelievable. It thaws Lionel out of the ice. And so, thanks to the sword's power, Lionel's free again, thanks to Chitara. Also, the good news, Lionel was happy to see Chitara and Snowmeow. Now he wants to know what is going on. Well, Chitara just told Lionel the bad news. The Thunder Tank's frozen, and so were Tiger, Snarf, and Patrol that were inside of it. And the Snowman, he's still frozen too. So there's only one thing for Lionel to do is to stall everybody out. And by how, you may ask? Well, he did what any good guy would do. He uses his sword to project the Thundercats signal. And so that's what he did. So after he did that, he uses his sword's power to defrost the Thunder Tank and along with everybody else in it. And so, good news, Panthro, Tigra, Snarf, and the Thunder Tank are no longer frozen thanks to Lionel and his sword power. Also the good news, thanks to Lionel's sword power, he defrosted the Snowman too, who's Snowmeow's sidekick. Not only did Snowman is happy to see his sidekick again, then, long story short, Snart just pleaded his case to Lionel. Let's get out of here and go to a lair where it's warm, he suggested. So Lionel, even though he agrees with Snart, but he says that he and his friends got something to deal with first. But then, according to Snowman, what the Ice King did was unbelievable. He was looking for something or someone. So Lionel was asking Snowman a question of what he knows about the Ice King. So the Snowman confessed that he knew absolutely nothing, but according to a Snowman, he has a hunch that the Ice King is searching for something important, something that he lost long ago. So Back with the Ice King, who continues to search for something, and then Lionel asked him, has he seen him before? And the snowman said no. But according to legend, according to Snowman, when he told Lionel that he's been buried in Hook Mountain for 1,000 years. Well, Panthro has his turn to plead a case, and he's not kidding to say, this guy looks good for 1,000 years old. Back with the Ice King, oh, he found something all right, a secret room that's located underneath the castle. But it's not just any secret room, it's an old castle's dungeon, but it's been locked for 1,000 years. But that doesn't mean, aha, the Ice King can solve that problem, and by how? By creating a battering ram that's made of ice. So thanks to the battering ram that's made of ice, good news for the Ice King, he broke the door. But what's inside of it? The Thundercats just couldn't help but wonder what's inside. Well, Lionel can solve that problem, and by how? He did what any good guy would do. He looked through his sword's eye. So that's what he did. So when Lionel looked through the sword's eye, what he saw was unbelievable. A dragon's nest. But not just that, but also a dragon, and it's guarding something. And that's not all. The Ice King is approaching the dragon. But after the dragon had attacked the Ice King, and when it got up off its nest, what Lionel saw next is an egg, something that belongs to the Ice King all these years ago. So that's what he was after. So back with Lionel, now that he realized the truth thanks to his sword, he called for the Ice King to get his attention. He says, how about a truce? If we work together, we can find this egg for you, he suggested. The Ice King, although he doesn't say a word, but he smiles at Lionel and nods in agreement. So Panthro and Tiger each asked a question. Panthro goes first by asking, do you think it's a good idea? Then Tiger asked Panthro, do you think we should trust him? Well, Chitara has her turn to plead a case to say the Ice King doesn't seem to be interested in any of the Thundercats anymore, just that egg inside the dungeon, she suggested. So long story short, after Snarf had pleaded his case, that's when Snowman said, well, what do you say we give it a try, shall we? And so he was the first to head off, right after Lionel did. So back with Lionel and the Thundercats, they now have made it to the exact same dungeon that the Ice King had just left from, and they're face to face with the exact same dragon that he just seen. The Ice King, that is. So, one at a time, one of the Thundercats passes one egg to another while dodging the dragon's attacks. Finally, when Tiger passes the egg to Snowman's sidekick Snowmeow, and of course Snowman who was with him, back with the Ice King, he now goes one on one with a dragon. What he did first is that he jumped right on top of him, and then both of them fell off the cliff. Long story short, the Thundercats, along with the snowman and his sidekick, had ran far away from the ravine because of its explosion. Now that the coast is clear, good news for the good guys. Back with the Ice King, who just fell in the ravine earlier, by surprise, what the good guys saw was unbelievable. He climbed himself up. Remember the egg that Snowmeow had in his mouth? Well, the ice giant was pointing at it. So, Snowmeow knows what to do. Thanks to Lionel, Snowmeow gives the egg to the ice giant. So after the ice giant knew what he was looking for inside, so after he was looking inside of it, he melted. The Thundercats and the Snowman were astonished. They just couldn't believe what they seen. The Ice King, gone. But then Lionel pleaded his case by asking a question, why is the Ice King being so desperate to find it all of a sudden? Well, Chitara has her turn after she looks inside of the egg. This will explain why. So after Chitara was looking in it, it's Lionel's turn, then Panthro, then Tigra. So after that, it's the Snowman's turn. So I guess you know what this means. According to Panthro, when he was speaking in his case to say the Ice King wasn't a bad guy, and of course, Snarf has his turn to look inside of it. And when he did, what he saw was unbelievable. The Snow King is now reunited with his Snow Queen inside of the egg. But then After Snarf was done looking at it, he asked a question. He said, "Wait a minute, are you trying to say that this Ice King we just saw and this young man who was a prince once upon a time are one of the same?" Then Lionel has his turn to not only answer Snarf's question that yes, he is, but he also says that there's no way to explain all this. There's no denying it. So, as Snarf can tell, that both the Ice King and his queen are at long last united. So now that everyone had left the dungeon, the snowman explains the legend of the Snow King. He said that 1,000 years ago, a terrible curse has placed the Ice Princess inside of its egg, the same egg that they have now, they being the Thundercats, that is. Also, as legend has it, the Ice Prince had been looking for her all these years but couldn't find her until that very moment. So that explains why he was after this egg, Snarf said, after learning it from Snowman. So Chitara has her turn to not only agree with Snarf, but she has a hunch that something must have thawed out the Ice King to search for it all these years later. And now that he has found it, and he's now reunited with his queen. So Panthro has his turn to plead a case to agree with Chitara. So Tigra has his turn to not only agree with Panthro, he said, and he's not kidding, that that's what I call true love. And of course, Snarf happens to agree with Tiger and says, "Wow, 1,000 years worth of that. Now that's something." And he's not kidding. So Lionel has his turn to ask Snowman a question. What are we going to do about this egg? At first, Snowman told Lionel that he can keep it as a token, but Lionel says that it wasn't necessary and then told Chitara that she can have it because he told her that she's the one that saved his life. But Chitara declined and then gives it to Snow Meow, who's Snowman's sidekick. Because if it weren't for him, then Chitara would never have made it when she did. Then Snow Meow gives it to Tigra, then Tigra gives it to Snarf. Then Snowman just let slip to Snarf to say, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. It's about the curse." "Oh no," Snarf says, "I had enough curses for one day, and one by one everyone was tossing the egg of who's keeping what and etc." That was until, thanks to Panthro, the egg went down in a ravine, lost forever. And then Snowman says, "Oh, as I was saying about the curse, whoever owns the egg will be happy forever." And yet Lionel tries to blame it on Snarf, but in retrospect, it was actually Panthro's fault. But Snarf says, "Oh well, I'm happy already anyhow." And he's not kidding because he has a lot of friends that could guide him on the way. And that's something that he can agree with. And so the Thundercats left Took Mountain. And so that ends episode 52.